Dun, 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 dun. Kids, welcome. It's Professor Thomas with a 5-minute science review. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, let's review what we've learned in class. Science, kids, don't be afraid of it. Basically, all we really need to do is find it. Everything is right there in front of you. You just got to get going to find the right area. So let's start with number one. Number one, we are going to go into the questions and we're going to underline what's important. Remember, what's important definitely is the location. If it tells you table 1 or figure 1, underline that. The second thing that we would do is underline stuff that feels like it's sciencey oriented. Okay, if it says something like, pressure, atmosphere, layer of soil, content of NaCl, something like that. Sciencey oriented nouns and verbs. We're going to go ahead and underline. Once we do that, we have everything underlined in the question. What we're going to do is we're going to use 2 fingers and we are going to point from the underlined portion and match it up in the data. Figure 1, atmospheric layer, atmospheric layer. Basically just match it up. When you get done doing all the pointing from the question, we are now at the set point. You point from the underlined portion in the question, match it up in the data, and you get down to the last thing in the question. You are now set. I call it the set point. From the set point, you're simply going to go ahead and drop and match your finger in the answer choices to the data. So instead of focusing in here on the data, we're going to just simply look at your answer choices, and you're going to know that when you focus and center your attention on the answer choices, that 3 of the answer choices are going to feel about the same. One of them is going to feel a little bit different. It's going to look a little different. That is going to be the correct answer. I call it sniffing out right answer choices. Remember, your center of attention for ACT Science should not be on trying to understand the data that's in front of you, because that's going to be time consuming. That's going to be difficult. They're going to give you stuff that is unfamiliar for the most part. So what we want to do is focus on trying to answer the question correctly. That means we just drop our finger in the answer choices. Check your answers against where your finger is pointing to. Once again, 3 of the answer choices are going to feel about the same. One of them will be a little bit different. That will be the correct answer. Drop and match. That should get you to about a composite score of a 26 or 27, because that's just a 1-level kind of a thing. Now, to differentiate yourself from the top kids in the country, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a 2-step process, and we're going to have to add something else in. Here's what happens to a normal kid that's in the low to mid-range science score section. They will go ahead and get to the area, and none of the answer choices are going to make sense. So what they do is they say to themselves, yikes, I am stalling out, and I'm going to have to get going here and just logically think about what answer choice makes the most sense. I feel like B is the right answer. At that point, most kids are just guessing. All right, what we want to do is we want to put our thinking cap back on, and we want to say to ourselves, all right, so I get to the point where I point into the data, and then I drop my finger in and try and match up the answer with what I see, and all of a sudden I say, yikes! None of those answer choices make any sense. So you know what's happening to us? We are stalling out. As I mentioned before, most kids will just give up here and guess. What we want to do now is we want to simply go in and add in step number 2, finger scan for some type of unknown sciencey term that needs to get defined. That unknown sciencey term may be something that feels very specific. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to apply this to an actual practice test. Here we have a science passage. You can see from here we've got experiments. There's quite a bit of data, but also there's quite a bit of text. let's go ahead and take a look at practice problem number 9 here. So step number 1, first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and underline. Problem number 9, I would underline in experiment 1, that's the location. It says during the decomposition of OFC2, I underline that. At 100 degrees Celsius, I underline that. As the time increased from 0 to 998, the pressure in the chamber did what? Okay, so I underline basically what is important in the question. Step number 1, underline. Now, step 2 is to go ahead and point. So first thing we're going to do is take one finger, and I'm going to go ahead and point to the first thing I underlined, which was experiment 1. Then, now we come back over here and we match up with our second hand, our second finger, find experiment 1. I'm pointing to experiment 1, experiment 1. You see that? Just use two hands to make sure you get to the right area. Now the reason we do this is because there's a lot of information in front of us and most kids are going to go to the wrong area. Now the second thing we do is we drop our finger into the next thing that we're looking for, 100 degrees Celsius. In experiment 1, we're going to go ahead and find 100 degrees. I see temperature, I see 100 degrees. We come over here. The next thing that we underlined here was OFC2. Now I've got one finger over here at 100. I simply switch it out, so I use two fingers and find OFC2. See how I'm scanning for it? There it is there. Now you see that my finger is on temperature at 100. I simply have to drop my finger down and match that here. You see how they're in parallel to each other? So I see here we have 100 is 998. I come back over here, I see as I drop my finger over here, 0 to 998. 0 to 998. So far, I'm simply matching everything up correctly. And now it's asking me about the time as it increases from 0 to 998. What happens to the pressure? Let's go back over here and take a look. So if you look over here, I'm looking for pressure and increase of time. Well, as I go like this with my finger here and my finger here, I don't see anything that has to do with time, and I don't see anything that has to do with pressure. Yikes. Can you say stall out, kids? We have simply stalled out. Now, when we have our fingers back over here at 998 and 100 in the OFC column here over there, what we're going to simply do is go back over here. We have stalled out. So what we do is we look in the question stem and we see if there's anything that feels like it's real specific. I see decomposition. I feel like that is some kind of an action verb. And then I look over here for pressure. That feels kind of like a noun or a verb. So I could pick either one of those. For me, I'd say probably decomposition. Feels like it's a little bit more specific to me. However, it might also be pressure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back over here. Remember, my fingers are still here in temperature at 100 and OFC2 at 998. Now, I simply chose the word decomposition, and since it told us up here that we have to go into experiment 1, I'm going to go into experiment 1 here, and I'm going to finger scan with two fingers and look for decomposition. Oh, there it is right there. When I do that, I underline decomposition, and I see it says decomposition of OFC is caused by pressure. That is one of our trigger words, which is an action verb. Both decomposition and pressure are in that text area, which is something that we would finger scan for here, pressure or decomposition at the top. Now, we found a definition. It says as the OFC is caused the pressure increase, the induction period, which is the time, the pressure rises to 0.20 ATMs. All right, so that's the definition here. Now what we're going to do is pull this definition up and simply throw it back into our answer choices. It says the induction period went to 0.20 and it increased. So right away you can see that A says decreased. We can cross that out. And now we have answer choice C or D. C says it increased from 0.20 ATMs to 0.01. First of all, that's incorrect because that's not an increase, that's an actual decrease, so that's wrong. And also, if you look over here, that's not what it says in the text. It says it increased to 0.20. As you look over here, answer choice D says it increased from 0.01 to 0.20 ATMs. That would be the correct answer. Let's do a quick review. As you come over here, you're going to see that when we underline what's important in the question, you take your fingers on two hands, you point from the underline in the question to the data, and then you simply drop your finger into the answer choices and look at your answer choices and match up where your set point finger is in the data to the correct answer. One of those answer choices is going to feel a little bit different. If you get to the point where you stall out, now you're going to have to go back into the question stem, which is the actual question, not the answers. Pull out one of those sciencey oriented nouns or verbs, and we're going to go ahead and throw that back into the question. We're going to finger scan for some type of a definition, pull the definition, and throw it back into the answer choices. So there you have it, kids. The things to keep in mind. The whole thing about science is just to find it. You are going to find it by either pointing or you are going to find it by finger scanning. Remember, the harder questions is a two-step process. That's a quick review for science. Hope that was helpful. Bye for now.